The question is, can you reason with America? Can you appeal to their better nature? My rock bottom feeling is that America is going to continue on this path. There are some parties like the Duran says the neocons have no reverse gear, and I think they're absolutely right in that. But what they're not asking is why. And I think delving into history again, if you look at how did the West, the Industrial Revolutions, get capitalized in the first place? Well, that will be the Opium Wars.
Welcome, everyone. It's Jeff Rich here from the Birding Archive, and joining me today from Britain, the wonderful... Oh, hang on. The wonderful Anna Chen, even more wonderful in solo shot, of course, but Anna Chen, writer, poet, performer, and most importantly, political analyst, author of Shakedown, Tracing...
Shakedown, Timeline of America's 21st Century War on China, which fantastic. I started at the beginning of the century, basically, in real time.
And that's, in a way, what we're going to be talking about today, but with a focus on the interpretation, I guess, of particularly US-China or Western, particularly US-China relationships after the Trump-Xi summit. I guess you could almost call it narrative wars about who won and what it all meant that have been going on since, but also have a bit of a look at the role of women in Chinese politics and culture. And we're also going to have a bit of a chat about Britain and, its special relationship with the United States perhaps as well. So, Anna, the Trump-Xi meeting happened a week or two ago. What was your assessment of the significance of this meeting and I guess as well as the actual meeting itself, I guess the different interpretations people have been offering of who won and what it all means about the directions of the world?
Well, my first thought was, all this for a baked apple? He arrives...
Is that all there is?
He arrives with this huge entourage, and it's been built up for months, hasn't it? It was supposed to have taken place weeks ago, and he obviously thought he was going to arrive with a strong hand, but in fact he doesn't even have a full deck, if you know what I mean. So he arrives with all these tech bros, and it's a sort of, it's more like a holiday break. It's a curiosity thing. You've got Elon Musk there with his camera making like a tourist. You've got that incredibly embarrassing lineup where she sort of, Trump's already has met. She's top people. Was there a woman? There might have been. I think there was a woman or two there. Anyway, so she introduces Trump to them. He then has to go and inspect and say hello to to his admin, and it was just embarrassing. I mean, they all looked guilty as sin for starters. You had Hexeth, who was like, really shuffling and looking down like as if he was about to meet the headmaster, who was going to call him out on being such an idiot. You've got Marco Rubio, who shouldn't have been there anyway because he's been sanctioned, so they had to schmiggle that somehow. And he winks at Trump, and now he knows all the cameras of the world are on them at this point. So what was the point of that? It's childish. What was he trying to signal? It was just sort of arrogant. They looked like frat boys. They reminded me of the frat boys in Animal House. And so she, keeps his dignity. He meets Voldemort. What was his name? Steve Miller.
Stephen Miller, yeah.
And there's that sort of longish Well, they said it was long. I don't think it was that long, but all of them are sort of smirking and trying to put up this air of bravado. So I think that all said it from the start. And then at the end of the line, there's Eric Trump, really excited, like a panting puppy, actually quite looking forward to meeting Xi. So I thought that sort of, set the atmosphere. You've got Xi, who's like a swan. I'm sure his feet are paddling away, madly underneath, but there's just this sort of equanimity, there's this calmness. You're sort of much more attracted to him. And I think there you have the story of both superpowers, really. One is calm, reliable, and stable, and the other one belongs in a stable, to borrow from Cheers. And what did they get? So Jensen Huang manages to hitch a ride on Air Force One. But while he's actually there, what we know now is that Huawei had yet to make their announcement, which they just made a couple of days ago, that by 2031 they're going to be creating 1.4 nanometers their chips, which is only lagging behind TSMC by 3 years. So there's this race to get, the chips smaller and smaller. But it also means they won't need the machines from the Netherlands, because the Netherlands have been using them as blackmail, as leverage against China. So that's all looking good. And poor Jensen Huang went back without a deal. In fact, I think Xi has now, because he's prioritizing homemade chips in order that they can't be blackmailed by America, he's put a lot of emphasis on that. And I think he's actually banned the import of some of these chips. The Boeing was expecting a deal of 600 airplanes. Then they had to put up with 200, and even the 200 planes that apparently, are in some doubt. From the very first moment, Trump being met by, a lower rank official, not Xi, but also it wasn't like even Wang Yi or anybody like that. It was someone who, I hadn't heard of him. If you compare that to Putin, when Putin left, there's even like this painting of him and Xi.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. You couldn't make it more clear, who was more valuable.
Yeah.
So you were talking about the Thucydides trap, and asking.
Yeah. Because, I guess I was interested also in your assessment of what China's approach to it. No, because certainly it seems the shallowness of US diplomacy was exposed a little bit, and they didn't get much out of it. But what was your read of the Chinese sort of performance and objectives, I guess, in the meeting? Because there has been a lot of debate around that, and a debate around just exactly what Xi meant when he referred to the Thucydides trap.
I thought the Chinese really looked bored and jaded throughout the whole thing, but they had to go through the motions or wading through something unpleasant. And when I think he had to mention the Thucydides trap, mainly because it's what the Pentagon, what all these guys. I think the Naval Academy. I think it's compulsory reading, isn't it, for them? Yeah. The reason a lot of the latecomer commentators presented it, they thought it was some, vitally significant, important document that they've only just discovered, is because they weren't around in 2017 when Graham Allison's book came out. So that for those of us who had been paying attention, I didn't read the whole thing, but I read a lot of the commentary around it. And I also knew of the Thucydides trap, because Herman Wouk, wasn't it, in 1980, when he first...
Oh, really?
Yeah, he coined the term.
He coined the term. He's like a fiction writer, isn't he? Yeah, is that right?
He gave us the Cane Mutiny, with that wonderful scene of Humphrey Bogart with the strawberries,
Yeah.
where in the courtroom scene where he starts to really panic and he sweats because he's got it wrong. Oh, go and watch that scene, because that applies so much to what's happening with the Americans. But anyway, so Herman Wouk, he gives a speech to one of the military institutions, so that's where that comes from, and that is why, you know, the same guys who are reading Art of War, the testosterone bros, you know, it's one of the things that you have to read. So this is saying, well, I'm not even sure that Graham Allison was saying it was inevitable. I thought, my impression was at the time, 2017, that he was raising it as an example of why America should not go into conflict with China.
That's absolutely right. His basic argument was it was like a call for the sort of noblesse oblige of American statesmanship, in a way, to sort of have the dignity and the grace to, give China a dignified second place in the world while America retains primacy.
Oh,
without a war, it's this very common thing in American political culture. As you say, like, it's all taught in the naval colleges, and they will read Alfred Mackinder and all this sort of stuff. And it's this sort of cartoon version of ancient history where, it sort of dignifies some pretty basic ideas, and the Thucydides trap is really a pretty basic idea. So is your read that she was referring to it to, I guess, appeal to that known element in talk your opponent's language?
No, I think he was trying to speak their language, but another reason why it's not inevitable is that I believe there was no war between Athens and Rome.
Athens and Sparta,
The Peloponnese War was between Athens and Sparta, but obviously it's a lot more complicated than the way it's set out.
Yeah.
But if it was inevitable that a rising power has to clash with the old one, then why wasn't there the same thing happening between Rome and Athens? So it's an interesting point. These things can happen. So I thought she was absolutely right to bring it up, so that they're sort of talking from the same playbook, and it's also saying that he understands where they're coming from and what their thinking is. I'm sure somebody like Elbridge Colby, I'm sure that he's got that on his bedside table, alongside the Art of War.
It really is a absolutely crappy book, but I wrote a longer piece on my Substack about it one time, so if people are interested, they can read that. But I guess behind it, there was an element of concern in some quarters, at least, about the way in which this got raised, and perhaps also the way some of the Chinese media, some of the, I guess, China-affiliated alternative media were commenting on it, whether it reflected a view that China and the USA could be the sort of co-hegemons of the world, the sort of two-empire world. Is that how you read the sort of discussion or the intent in China?
I thought she was just saying we can both exist in this world. And people got very upset that he might have been saying that you're a decaying force. Well, I think there are plenty of American commentators who've acknowledged that. Look at the social decay. Look at what is happening. The fact that they're getting into all these wars, the fact that somebody like Donald Trump can be elected not just for a first time, but for a second time, ushered in by Biden, of course. And I also think that Biden, the Democrats, wanted somebody like Trump in so that he could do all their dirty work and they could keep their hands lily white. But yes, do they want to carve the world up as two hegemons? I don't think that's true. But what I do believe, and this is something that's really hit me with this reading the Tony Blair essay today, and I think it's always been clear, the question is, can you reason with America? Can you, appeal to their better nature and all that? My rock bottom feeling is that America is going to continue on this path. There are some parties like the Durand says the neocons have no reverse gear, and I think they're absolutely right in that. But what they're not asking is why. What is giving this away? And I think, delving into history again, if you look at how did the West, the industrial revolutions, get capitalized in the first place? Well, that will be the Opium Wars. If you think that the number of countries, that after Britain had waged these wars to nobble China and to force them to take very cheap, mass-produced opium that had been grown in stolen Bengal, and make profits that way. Also, it meant that the silver that they didn't have to go to a middleman to buy all the chinoiserie that the upcoming British middle classes had fallen in love with. So a lot of that money, so it's not just Britain. So Britain kicks it off, but America is the second largest beneficiary of this. And you think of all the families, the dynasties, the East Coast dynasties, who were established because of the opium trade, the Delanos, Forbes, Perkins, Russell, Astor, a whole load of them. And this money gets invested. And what does it get invested in? Well, it goes into railways, it goes into banking, it goes into the big trading companies. So you have the basis of American wealth being made because they screwed over China the first time.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. There's actually a great cartoon from around about 1900. I think it's around about the time of the Boxer Rebellion. And the headline is Uncle Sam Puts His Foot Down, and it shows Uncle Sam, the United States, reading the Riot Act to all the other European powers carving up China. So if, the idea that the United States is not part of the sort of European entry into China in the 19th century is quite a myth, really. But
they were one of the 8 nation alliance, of course, during the Boxer Revolution in 1900 that put that down, as we know from Charlton Heston in the Boxer. I'm going to have to. I did a review of the Boxer Rebellion movie, Hollywood movie. I think I'm going to have to do that to camera.
Yeah.
I will give that a reading. So America made a fortune from China. So the idea that they're now blaming everything on China is just a big joke. These are people who do not know their history. So no wonder they have this grip on the Thucydides trap to prove that they have some intellectual worth. So because they did that the first time, and it was a success for America. Since the 2008 crash, I think that was a huge wake-up call for American capitalism, because China actually saved American capitalism by acting as the shock absorber, using its huge reserves to buy up debt, allowing the global currencies to devalue against them, all sorts of things. China's intervention kicks off the longest bull run in American markets ever. And of course, the way they're thanked is that the neocons realize and and I've said this before, that Mitt Romney, who was Obama's Republican opponent in the 2008 presidential election, although he's a Republican, they still have communication. I don't know how friendly they were, but certainly Mitt Romney is dripping poison into his ear and is a bridge between him and the neocons. Right. So the few other things that have happened recently is that before Trump went to China, Robert Kagan writes this piece in the Atlantic where he's saying, I mean, he says himself, you know, America's over, it's finished, but there's a like, if you don't, you know, do this. So people realize that, you know, Kagan and the neocons are putting pressure on Trump not to give up, because you can tell, you know, Trump's being pulled all sorts of ways. I think he'd rather give up and go home and basically concentrate on the midterms. But Kagan wrote that. But what people are also forgetting, that in January, Condoleezza Rice visits the White House, where she's obviously quietly putting him under heavy manners. And the idea is, you've gone this far. We didn't want you to do it this crudely, but now that you're in this far, you've crossed the Rubicon point of no return. You can't stop. You have now got to see it through. So he does that, and then he wavers again. And that's when I think Kagan, in this piece, he actually brings it into the light what they're about. So I don't think this made the neocons terribly happy, that they had to, you know, show their hand even more and tell him what to do. So having this shock in 2008, they realise that they've got to get this plan for contain, by the way, that's such a euphemism for conquest. You know? So they have to get this off the back burner, and they have to set it in motion properly. And of course, Obama is the tool. I mean, isn't that always the way? You get women if you want to oppress women, you get ethnics if you want to oppress ethnics, you get leftists if you want to oppress you know, minorities. So he does this pivot to Asia, which is very, very aggressive, and sets the whole thing in motion. All Trump does is that, you know, big idiot, he comes along and he just doubles down because this is something else I'm going to talk about in the piece that I'm writing at the moment. Rupert Murdoch's part in this, and note that the golden age with China, when there's relatively peace, coincides with Rupert's marriage to Wendy Deng, who I see as the Helen of Troy. So never mind the Thucydides trap. I'm going to be talking about the Trojan Wars and what was happening there. And I'm sure the latecomers will, you know, be, you know, realizing that's true, and will be regurgitating that at some point. Quite soon.
Yes. I mean, via Rupert Murdoch, Australia is actually the secret hegemon of the whole world, you see.
Oh, God, yes.
The original Australian oligarch.
Oh, no, but you know, if Trump is the most powerful man in the world, Rupert Murdoch made him. So what does that make him? I don't know, Richelieu, Kingmaker, or what? I don't know. I don't know. So you... sorry. Okay.
No. I guess one of the things that I've wondered aloud about, without really being 100% clear on what the right answer is whether there is at least a group or an element of Chinese sort of strategic thinking and commentary that believes it can sort of appeal to the United States' better nature and sort of, focus on partnership and help make America more like its better self, and emulate, China's role for development and somehow sort of, I think Xi himself refers to the great ship of Chinese-US relationships and navigating that. And I do wonder sometimes whether it is a kind of a blind spot or some sort of misjudgment about the very nature of the United States, and whether it's actually, maybe a mistake that China is making in its strategic assessment of how the world is shaping up. What do you think about that?
Well, I think, they're heavy-duty Marxists. They know the way the whole system works, and that capitalism is its own gravedigger, and all that. I'm sure there are some. It's like there's a part of me that thinks this is so illogical what you're doing. It's hurting everybody, apart from that elite core. So America has obviously just given up on its own people. It's hollowed out its working and middle classes. It doesn't care what happens to them. You see the poverty and the degradation. This is all about this core enriching itself. So I think, and I sympathise with China. I'm with China on this. You have to give them the chance that they can come out this, because you never know if there was pressure from below, like all those Americans who realise they're being ripped off and they've gone on to Red Note, they've seen how Chinese actually live their lives. Maybe if there was some sort of not kickback, that's like a bribery thing, but if there's some resistance from them, and America was presented with a better way to be. Look, become part of the global community, and there's plenty for everyone to go to, for everyone to get some. There's plenty to go around. The problem is you have this hardcore of neocons and super rich who've made this. There are 3,500 billionaires in the world, and they're worth a total of about 20 trillion. And there's just this mindset. They want it all. Paul Singer actually said, he told Greg Palast, I want it all. It's there. It's like a game. They're insatiable. This is anyway, that Greek character, right?
Yep.
Who was cursed by the gods, who eats himself. They're all stricken with that. They want more and more and more. So how do you deal with that? It's like a sickness. It's a real illness. So Chinese, I don't think, want to rule the world, because what's in it for them? They've said they've got the example of America. What does it bring? It just brings grief. Whereas, for somebody like Xi and his peers who were in the fields, who were sent to the countryside, during the Cultural Revolution, that's not so good. But the positive thing to come out with that was they genuinely were living with the people, with the peasants, and there's another joy that communists get out of this, which is that feeling you've done something good for people. And I don't think the psychology of the American elite and the establishment understands that, and it's a shame, because it's supposed to be a Christian country, love thy neighbor as thyself, and all that, and the temple, turning over the tables in the temple. When's that going to happen? They're more into the Samson thing, aren't they, about bringing the whole temple down with them, which is a shame. So no, I don't think China wants to carve up the world. I think it sees itself in a unique position where it can lead the world into a better place, because it's just hell on earth now.
Yeah, and I guess it's that how do you confront a bully without causing a bar fight? I guess.
But they didn't cause the bar fight.
Well,
You had
I
this
know, but it's
you-
sort of like somehow you got to diffuse the situation.
You had, but isn't it like Lyndon
yeah.
Johnson said? You have to, speak softly and carry a big stick. And China's learnt from the country that, America, that spends more on its military than the next nine nations put together, that you have to be strong. And I didn't hear anything in that speech that was threatening America. It was like, peace, harmony, we can work together, all the good things. It's only because these people are so inadequate that they can't grasp that and say, well, yeah, let's try working. We were working with them for a long while. Why don't we go back to that pattern? The answer to that is, and my dad drilled this into me from when I was a little girl, which is, this is how imperialism works. Do you want me to tell you the story of how my dad?
Absolutely.
Right. Well, when he was a communist, I mean, he's dead now. He's been gone since 2004. But when he was a communist, the word came from Russia under Khrushchev that the communists all over the world were supposed to make peace with imperialism. And a lot of the communist parties of different countries were doing that. You had to sign a paper, apparently, this pledge. And my dad refused because he said, when you say make peace with imperialism, how do you make peace?
So can I just clarify, Anna, this is like late 1950s, early 1960s sort of thing?
Early 1960s. So Khrushchev, and, there'd been the Bay of Pigs and all that. So we nearly got, through nuclear war. And he said that there's just no logic in this because imperialism means war. How can you make peace with something that means war? Because if you're forever expanding and taking over other, people's nations and taking their stuff, how can there be peace in that? So this is something, the dynamic of imperialism is something you can never forget. If America gave up imperialism and said, okay, we're going to put all our elite in Guantanamo Bay, we're going to restructure everything, and we're going to give people their territories back, the way Britain had to, basically, with its Commonwealth, then you might be in with a chance. But at the moment, they've got this one trajectory, this tunnel vision, they've got this aim. At the end, you've got this super arc, basically. So you have various smaller arcs, and it can explore different tributaries and distributaries and go up dead ends and so on. But you have to remember, America has now given itself this super arc. Part of that is when they said they're never ever going to allow another nation like Russia had to be able to compete with them and challenge them. And another is, if you've had the shock of the 2008 great crash and you need to recapitalize, then if you're not that bright and you're only going by literally the stuff that's happened before, and you've got a model which is the Opium Wars. You saw how Britain waged the Opium Wars, and in fact that financed Britain in India as well, the whole infrastructure and its bureaucracy. And if you know that America's industries were financed by that, then let's do that again. We did it once, surely we can do it again. Unfortunately, first time is tragedy and the second time is farce and tragedy. So that's the railroad that I think we're on.
It will be really interesting to watch this as it develops. And the discussion on various YouTube channels, has been quite interesting to watch too. And I've said with a few guests and on a few other shows that I think maybe China could do a little bit more, on the international stage. And often the response to that is, well, what do you want it to do? Fight World War III? And I think, well, I don't know, maybe there's a few more steps in between other than World War III.
Yeah, this argument
But
came up around Venezuela, didn't it? Because there are a
yeah,
lot of, I mean, I have a friend in Venezuela who I spoke to regularly, and he actually ended up, he was quite hurt, and I understood it. He said, why can't they do more? Why can't they do more for us? But the problem is, if you think of how far away Venezuela is, it is in America's backyard. It's nowhere near China. What do you do realistically? You've got supply chains, you've got, you get your fleet out there, and then what? Plus the fact, you've got this big battle that's coming your way in the South China Sea, all around the Pacific. Oh, and given what Japan is doing, and the Philippines, they've got this international airport, so-called, that they're supposed to be developing in the Philippines, that was actually an American air base, and it's quite clear. So they're losing Taiwan. Taiwan isn't such a sure thing right now. So Japan's stepping into the breach. You've got that whole island chain being armed to the teeth. You got the Philippines now. I mean, how stupid is that? What they're doing? So they're offering themselves as cannon fodder for America. Japan has been seduced into it because it's now, oh, you're not just our little sidekick. You're a partner. You're going to decide these things with us. And, Japan, which has never really apologized or had soul searching over what it did in World War II, is saying, oh, we can make ourselves great again, and given what America did to them during the Plaza Accords during the 1980s and basically wrecked their economy, I'm just amazed that they're going along with this.
It's the whole thing of, I think Freud apparently once said to a patient, or was reputed to have said to a patient, do you want me to be helpful or effective? And maybe that's part of the issue with China now, that they have to make very fine judgments around.
But they are
there's
doing
all sorts of things they could do, but what's actually going to work, kind of thing.
But it's not that they're just doing nothing and
exactly.
And hiding. If you look at all the rail network that they've got going from Iran to China now, that's feeding in, and I'm so annoyed because Europe and Britain, which was at the end of the Eurasia landmass, the railway, we actually got their first train in 2017, and then I think no more. We could have been part of that. It's prosperity through peaceful trade. That's what we were looking at. China offered to build our high-speed rail. It offered to build our nuclear power plants. It was giving us 5G. All of these things without a shot being fired. And now we've got to succumb to all this absolute nonsense. But the other thing China's doing is it's being very careful with its rare earths. It knows very well what hand it has with that. So it's using that instead of just sucking up to America and saying, oh no, please don't hurt us. Look, here, take our rare earths. They're being really sensible about it. And also things like when they stopped Jack Ma's Ant Group IPO, which would have made Jack Ma and Ant too big to fail, and obviously he's more sympathetic to America. That would have been a horrendous Trojan horse, full of Greek soldiers in there. So they were sensible about that. So they've done lots and lots. Now, where I share your perturbation around this is that it took until March 2020 for China to even recognize there was something wrong. I mean, I remember that I was writing, observing and yelling about this really from 2017 and really 2018, it was quite clear with the launching of the trade war that this wasn't just the trade war. None of it made sense. None of it. You know, Wall Street was saying, "What are you doing? We've never made profits as good as this." So in 2020, so they just ignored all of this. They were just pretending nothing's wrong, and being reasonable. You know, ultra reasonable. It's like, you know, stop it. They can see you're being too compliant here. You know. Liu He, the poor guy who was charged with negotiating with the Trump regime, he was being humiliated left, right, and centre. You know, come May 2019, when he arrives in Washington ready to sign this deal, and as he lands, Trump says, "Oh no, it's off. I'm not going to do that." And even Steve Mnuchin was taken by surprise. It was obvious there was a game being played. And then, like a month later, you've got the Hong Kong riots that are kicking off with the help of the National Endowment of Democracy, and we now know from when Doge or Elon Musk. I have a block on Elon Musk's name for some reason. But when he closed down USAID and we saw what Ned had been up to, so there was that, and then there was COVID straight after. So it's one damn thing after the other, all coincidental, of course, you know. But people were asking, well, China, why aren't you saying anything? Why aren't you doing anything? And then do you remember Zhao Lijian, who was the spokesperson? He tweets, you know, he's like Toto in The Wizard of Oz, and he pulls the curtain back, and you can actually see that the Wizard of Oz is this old geezer, and he calls them out on COVID. And I've written a piece about this because it was really funny the way, having been so compliant for decades, you get one person who talks back to the hegemon, who calls them out, and suddenly the whole of the media explodes as one. Wolf warrior, you see, they're just wolf warriors. And it's like, where did that come from? This guy's given one, you know, put out one tweet, and it's like they're all ready to brand them. It's part of this character assassination as, yes, you're always argumentative, you're always aggressive, you're always hostile. So he's my hero in a way, because he broke that vacuum and he called it like it was. And I think that was a major step for China, and it was really good for them. I think he may have got flack for that, which I think is really sad, because I think the guy deserves a medal. Yeah.
So I guess it's going to be an open question, and I mean, it's a question worth debating, because, you know, there's always options in life. So maybe China can do more, but I guess it would be interesting to see how things develop. And it's not all going the US way. Just in the last couple of days, the opinion, you know, India's confirmed it's not going to bother with the sort of leaders summit for the Quad. So the general discussion out of India is the Quad is pretty much, you know, a shelved project, you know, sent off to the archive somewhere.
AUKUS.
AUKUS is just an expensive waste of money by the Australian government.
Did Australia kick over the money before? Have they actually paid for the?
Oh, well, we're going to be paying for 30 years or something. It's just appalling. It's
mafia. It is such a mafia shit.
Yeah, it's truly bad. But the Quad, which is, you know, the Japan, India, Australia, US, not really alliance, but cooperative arrangement, generally seen as a China balancing strategy, has kind of gone into abeyance a little bit over the last 2 years, partly because of the way the US has acted towards India, but maybe also because India is maybe balancing against the United States with China, even perhaps in some ways.